Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gothy Roundtable, the official talk show of r/Goth. I'm Cadaver Kelly, and as always, I'm joined by my awesome co-hosts, Dave and DJ Carnivorous. Hi, Dave.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Caroline.
Hey.
This month, our topic is Gen Z Goths. We'll be talking about what it's like for young people getting into the goth scene in the modern era. Our guests are none other than two real-life Gen Z Goths. KB, Sinister, and Indigo, welcome to the roundtable.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to give you both a chance to introduce yourself and share any public social media or projects you may have. So KB, I'll start with you.
All right. Hi, I am KB Sinister. I am 22. I'm in the less cool part of New York, and I am a comic artist. I am currently in the process of drawing and writing an original comic series, and you can find updates on said series on my Instagram at batfiend, like caffeine, but with bat, and on my website at batfiend.com. I know it's a little sparse right now because I'm recovering from an injury, but I promise, when I get, y'all will be the first to know, because I will not shut up.
All right, and Indigo, how about you?
Hey, my name's Indigo. I'm goth in the New York City scene. I've been into the subculture for a year and a half now, and, well, I don't really have anything to promote, but you can always find me on the Gothy Discord, just shit posting around.
All right, we love to promote Gothy Discord on Gothy Roundtable. So everyone, join Gothy Discord. Just another reason to. You could probably chat with Indigo in there. So I will link KB's projects in the description for anyone who's watching this back on YouTube. Thank you both again for joining us. So since this episode revolves around getting into goth in the modern era, I wanted to ask you two a little bit about how you got into goth, how long you've been actively interacting with others in the goth scene, just kind of your general goth journey. So Indigo, you mentioned you've been into goth for about a year and a half, so I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, so originally I thought goth was like this aesthetic fashion subculture that most people have been telling me about, or that I learned through cartoons. I didn't really get my first exposure until I read this webcomic. I think it's called Transfusions. And there was a goth character in the comic. And I was looking up art for him. I saw eventually that he was wearing band shirts, and I was curious about those, but I didn't really look into the subculture until I watched Trash Theory's video about goth, and I learned about Bauhaus through there. And originally, after the video, I went to go listen to Bela Lugosi's Dead, which I didn't really like at first. So then I was like, but this band has an interesting discography, I bet. So I went to check out the first half of In the Flat Field, and that's when I lost my shit.
That's a very excellent starting point. KB, how did you first get into goth?
Oh boy. So very similarly to Indigo, I had always heard that it's this mindset, it's this lifestyle, it's all of that. And being an alternative teenager myself, towards the end of my high school career, I had adopted a very kind of 2000s mall goth kind of aesthetic. All of the kids in school kind of knew me as the one goth girl. I was listening to like fucking Visual K, so I didn't know what I was on about. But one day, I think it was July 8th, 2018. I want to say it's that. Let's just say it's that. I was on YouTube kind of doing my thing, drawing, listening to Ma Death Grail. Totally not goth, late 90s Visual K band. And I decided to go on my usual quest of what is the most obscure song that I can manage to find from YouTube's suggested videos. Well, somehow, for some reason, act of God or cursed algorithm, I found This Time by the Frozen Autumn. And I'm looking at this thumbnail like, what the hell is up with their hair? It's like Visual K hair, but not? What is this? Is this some kind of Western project I've never heard about? So I click on it to figure out, what's going on over here. And hey, if I don't like it, at least I'm in an incognito tab, and I'll have something to talk with my friends about later. Well, I ended up listening to the full song. I'm like, holy crap. They make music like this that isn't an anime? This is really good. So for the rest of that subsequent night, I had ended up with like 25 different tabs open of different dark wave stuff. Frozen Autumn, She Passed Away, not fully goth, but kind of teetering on the edge, Posy Noir. And I had stuck with that for quite a while, up until I went to community college starting that same year. And eventually one of my friends had recommended to me, once again, not goth, but we all like them for some reason. I mean, they're great. Depeche Mode. And so I have started getting really into synth pop and noticing some similarities between some of the darkwave bands I listen to and synth pop. And from there, I got into Tears for Fears, all of that. Eventually, I don't remember how, I think I was like on Google, Googling bands similar to the Frozen Autumn. Because by then, I'd gone through their whole discography, and I'm like, I need more. There's got to be more that sounds like this. So for some reason, in those recommendations comes up London Midnight, Switchblade Symphony, Rosetta Stone. And, you know, being the edgy kind of Mogoth early college student that I was, I'm like, damn, they make bands that are this cool. You know, obviously, you know, that late 90s kind of edgelord aesthetic, literally just London After Midnight, to the point where I have their whole discography on CD. Look, it's good. But anyway, I started getting into a lot of that 90s stuff because I was not only interested in the aesthetic, but the music was exactly what I was looking for. You know, I had spent the entirety of my life trying to find a sound that really resonated with me. And by the time, I think it was Rosetta Stone that really cemented that. I heard An Eye for the Main Chance once, and something in my brain just clicked, and I went, holy shit. This is it. This is the niche that nothing else I have found in my lifetime has been able to fill. I have to find more of this. There has to be more of this. It got to the point where my mother looked at me and was like, is that all you talk about now is just this Rosetta Stone band? Is that it? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. So in the following months, I just kind of went deeper and deeper and deeper. I would just have whole nights where I would queue up anything I could find on YouTube and just go through all of that, which is actually, I think it might have been that or Spotify, how I found out about Specimen, which any of you who are in Gothy Discord, you know what the KB and KB Sinister stands for. Kiss, kiss, bang, bang. And from there, I just got more and more into it. And being a person on the autism spectrum, when you get really into an interest, you have to know everything about it. So I just started loading up on interviews, music videos, band histories, discographies, which eventually brought me to finding out that Rosetta Stone was releasing an album in 2019, that being Seems Like Forever. And I found out about that post on the Goth subreddit, which coincidentally led me to joining Gothy Discord a few months later with World's Most Pretentious Intro.
Now you're a mod on there too.
Yeah, I got mod authority. Yay.
Indeed.
It's a really awesome story. So both of you had mentioned the internet with finding goth, getting into goth, and as Gen Z goths who had access to modern social media when you were first getting into it, how much of a role has social media played in your experience, not just getting into goth, but your overall experience with goth up until this point? Is social media something that plays a big role in your interactions with the goth community? So I'll start with you, KB, on that one.
All right. Interesting. I think without the presence of the internet and social media, I would not have had any exposure to the subculture whatsoever, because I honestly didn't have any exposure to music that I really liked up until I was a teenager. Because, so I'm from a very boring kind of suburb, And the music in this house was always radio pop country, or smooth jazz or something of the sort. I went to a very kind of small town, very stereotypical teen movie kind of high school, where I was genuinely the only alternative kid of any sort. Out of 4 years worth of students, it was just me. So I ended up finding out about, Visual Kei, which was the first genre that I really got into through an anime VHS tape that I quickly went to YouTube to try and find the music for. And from there, I got all of my information, all of my research virtually. The internet was a big part of my teenage years, which was how I made most of my friends at the time. I was very, being the only alternative kid and being one of the only students on the spectrum at my school, I was pretty isolated. So I ended up making most of my friends online. And being well-versed in internet spaces has absolutely helped me out being a mod in Gothy Discord, but that's for later in the story. I really wouldn't have found out about Goth at all if not for the internet. And coincidentally, the internet has actually been a huge help in me finding out what Goth actually is, because right from the get-go, I started learning, hey, this is a music-based subculture. The music you are listening to right now is what Goth is about. It's not Marilyn Manson. It's not Birthday Massacre, which very thankfully, because I really don't like Marilyn Manson.
I think we all hate him.
Just a bit.
Just a little. I'm not always able to be involved in the physical scene just due to the fact that I work on club night, because that was the only, I was the only person who was willing to close on Saturdays. Yay money, but at the same time, ugh. So without access to the internet, I would not really have much of a place in the scene at all. This has allowed me to make a ton of friends, be exposed to new artists or artists I hadn't even heard of before. And a lot of my participation being, your local suburban retail goth has come from being active on Gothy Discord, browsing the subreddit, interacting with other goths on other social media platforms.
Excellent. Well, I'm really glad to hear that you've been able to find that community and have that level of involvement by having resources like that. So Indigo, how about you? How much of a role has social media played in your goth experience so far?
I guess it would start off with YouTube, because that's where I found Bauhaus in the first place. I literally looked up their first album, In the Flat Field, and just listened to the first half of it. I really got into Double Dare, In the Flat Field, Stigmata Martyr, all those songs. And then with the YouTube thing, I also got into other albums. I think one of the first few albums I listened to after that was Kaleidoscope by Susie and the Banshees. And then I also listened to Biography by The Cure. And then the first that I really got into through YouTube was Alien Sex Fiend. I started listening to most of their discography there too. Yeah. And, after that, I started looking for subreddits. I eventually joined the Gothy Discord, and that's where I started learning more about the subculture. At some point, I had Reddit, but I've recently deleted it for my mental health, because all the bad news, all stuff just got to me at some point. And also with Gothy Discord, without it, I wouldn't have known about the clubs, because now I'm a freaking club goer because of the mods who live in New York or similar.
And
that's awesome. So we've touched on this a little bit so far. I'm a giant music nerd, as are most goths. And so I always like to hear about everyone's musical journey in goth. You two have touched on the bands that you started out with. KB, you might be the first person I've talked to who started with the Frozen Autumn, so that's very cool. And Indigo started with a lot of the classics that a lot of us start with, Bauhaus, The Cure, Susie. So are there any other bands that you started heavily getting into when you were first discovering goth, and how has that musical journey evolved? What kind of music are you listening to these days, or what maybe artists or subgenres do you seem to gravitate towards the most? So Indigo, I'll start with you.
So like I said, I started with Bauhaus, and I still consider them my favorite band to this day. I'm literally going to go see them in September. I'm so excited. Otherwise, I was into for the most of the first part of the subculture, for the first years of the subculture, I was into the more classic bands, so I was listening to mostly The Cure, Sisters of Mercy, The Mission. Only recently have I started branching out to other subgenres and other newer bands. So if I had to say right now, I think one band that I'm currently obsessed with is Detoxy. I even
Yes.
Flesh.
Yes, death rock, love it.
Yeah, I love death rock. I listen to it all the time these days. I also recently got into 1919.
Oh, very
Nice.
cool. 1919 are a classic, but of course they have new material too. So that's a great one. That kind of spans both of those categories of a classic band, but also new material. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, other bands I got into Horror Vasi, The Pale is Great. Shout out to Azzy, Malik, and Ripley. Awesome people. What other bands have I gotten into? Well, I mean, I also got into Christian Death during the first year or so, but yeah, I mostly listen to death rock.
Oh, that's very cool. So KB, how about you? How has your musical taste in goth evolved from that first discovering of the Frozen Autumn and all that dark wave, and what kind of stuff do you gravitate towards now?
Oh, this will be fun. This is very interesting to me personally. So, obviously, I started with a lot of dark wave and stuff. Then very slowly, as I started to find out kind of about all of the, I'll say it, all you needed was, in order to make a goth band in the 90s, was one man and a drum machine. Very much before even finding out about Sisters, I was into all of the Sisters clone bands, like Rosetta Stone, Merry Thoughts, just that barrage of constant up-tempo sound, all of the effects, the driving beat, the lyrical force. That's what really got me. I'm like, finally, music that I can be pretentious to, but also imagine all of my comic cast and music videos in my head. This is exactly what I wanted. So for a good while at the very beginning of my goth journey, I wasn't even fully aware that there was a lot of goth in the 1980s, and that's kind of where we got our start in the late 70s, early 80s. I was just straight up not aware that this was a thing. And so I was very much a bit of an edgy little thing. I was going through a lot at that point in my life, and a lot of the harder hitting, heavier stuff really resonated with me. Big London After Midnight fan at that point. And then after I started using Spotify and whatnot, getting a bit deeper into the music is when I started getting into a lot of the classics, especially like Susie and the Banshees, Bauhaus, Specimen. The moment I heard Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I just kind of lost it, which then escalated further the moment I heard what I would say is my favorite song is Beauty of Poison. And I'm like, this is it. This is the single best thing I have ever heard in my entire life. And so I kind of ended up going back in time a little bit musically. And to this day, I would say my favorite songs are very much in terms of the 80s stuff. There are a lot of current artists that I like. I am actually wearing a Crew Lies shirt right now. Shout out to Crew Lies. They fucking rock. Sorry if I can't curse. But I
it's
also
okay.
But I'm sorry. Anyway, I'd say, even outside of goth, my all-time favorite bands are Specimen, Susie and the Banshees, and Flesh for Lulu. If you do not know Flesh for Lulu, I beg of you, please listen to them. They are incredible. Rest in peace, Nick Marsh.
Yes.
I kind of discovered them on accident from a cassette tape that I found completely at random in the local record store for only $1. Plastic Fantastic, their last album, which was released 1989, I believe. And on the back of the cassette tape, I saw a very familiar name, Kev Mills. So Kev Mills, who played the bass and Flesh for Lulu for a spell, was also the drummer of Specimen. Turns out he also did quite a bit of songwriting for Flesh for Lulu, including my favorite song of theirs, Time and Space, which makes me cry every single time, like a wuss. I like a lot of very glam influenced stuff, very much with that authentic 80s post-punk sound, especially. It's no surprise that outside of goth, my favorite genres are glam rock and glam metal, so anything that's very sparkly, very up-tempo, and really just gets me immersed in the music, that's what I like.
I'm the complete opposite. My other genre, aside from death rock, is big beat, which is a lot of like the Prodigy, Propeller Heads, the Chemical Brothers, a lot of 90s electronic music.
That's some interesting variety we have going on. The glam influence stuff, very cool. I was actually going to say when you said that Beauty of Poison is one of your favorites, I'm like, all right, so the glam, the kind of almost Bowie-esque influence side of goth, that's very cool. So KB, I know you said that you work during the club nights in your area and that you have a lot of online interaction. Have you ever gone out to any of your local club nights or been involved in any local events?
Such has been the plan for a while, but at this point, I'm just one day going to say, hey, HR, this is my 2 weeks notice. I'm going to take a day off here. Just schedule me for Sunday or something. But I did actually go technically to one local event. We have a fantastic local Cure cover band. Shout out to Disintegration. Y'all are amazing. They had a show back in July. I went and met up with another member of the Gothy Discord there. All three Goths in Rochester, all located directly in the Gothy Discord server. So if you happen to be in Rochester, New York, you can meet all three of us. The other primary event that I've gone to was actually Murder of Crows 2021. Decided to hike it down to the city, meet Indigo, and a bunch of the other mod team and general regulars on Gothy. We all went for 2 days and just had an absolutely fantastic time. The bands were incredible. The music was great. One of the DJs did play Beauty of Poison fairly on in the first night. And jumping around, anyone was there may have seen me like just jumping around physically. It was quite funny. I was very excited. It was an amazing time. And so hopefully, local folks, I will be able to see you soon, provided I can persuade my boss.
Oh, Chester, New York. I'm up that way sometimes. I have family up there, but I also know a goth rock band up there in Rochester, Lovers Deceivers. So they're a local band that are up there. Very, very cool. So when you did go out to see Disintegration, did you notice other goths sort of in your age range, maybe early 20s, or was it mostly an older crowd? Were you on the younger side for the crowd?
That was really interesting because there was just generally quite a mix of people there. Obviously, a lot of very general alternative folks. I would say probably the average age for like visibly alternative people was maybe between like mid 20s to like early 50s. I've heard from my friend who has been a scene regular since the 90s that a lot of our scene does tend to meld with the general sort of alternative scene in Rochester and is also tends to skew older just because most of the young folks just kind of get out of here. However, we do have a very large college. We have a few colleges actually in the area that brings in some of the younger folks overall. But it was a very interesting mix of people across generations and plenty of people who I'm like, y'all just kind of look like people that I would actually see at work. Nobody who was very visibly goth necessarily, except for about 50-50 maybe, but for all I know, they could have way more goth cred than I do, so.
Gotcha, so more low-key.
Yeah, definitely. Much more low-key here. It's very small.
Yeah, my local scene was a lot like that up until recently, although the past couple years, especially since the shutdown, things have exploded, and we do have a lot of like young people who go full out goth coming out to the clubs now, which is cool to see. So KB, you mentioned that you have become a club goer in the New York scene. So are there other goths in your age range, maybe that early 20s range, or are you on the younger side for your local scene? Or Indigo, sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say, so I got into the subculture during the middle of the pandemic, so I originally couldn't go to any clubs at all because they were all closed. I didn't start going to clubs until Red Party opened back up in July of 2021. That's where I actually met some of the mods like Sav and Gar, who are really cool people, by the way. Yeah, and then I went for a little bit. I eventually got to go to Murder Crows too. Again, that's where I met KB. Other than that, I haven't really gone to any other events. I am going to St. Vitus this Friday, which should be exciting because I'm mainly going because I want to see David J spin a set because I hear he's going to be there. Yeah, and when I go to the clubs, it's mostly older folks I see. Looks like people more in their 30s, 40s. I've even seen some elderly folks there, which is really cool to see. I really do feel like the youngest person in the rooms whenever I'm there, but it doesn't really bother me that much. I'm just there to enjoy the music and have fun.
That's awesome. I know a number of people up there in the New York City scene. I do plan to get to the Red Party and Murder of Crows at some point in the future. So maybe I'll meet one or both of you there one day. So Indigo, I'll start with you on this question. We have getting into the goth scene. I think most of us have had both positive and negative experiences dealing with older goths as we're getting into it. Do you have any stories of maybe more negative experiences with older goths that you'd be willing to share?
So far I haven't had any really negative experiences. The only time where I had a negative experience was there was a guy at Murder of Crows who did try to bother me a little bit, but other than that, I try not to let it.
Well, that's great to hear. KB, how about you? Have you had any maybe not so great experiences with older goths that you'd be willing to share?
Honestly, really positive experiences for the most part thus far. I mean, being a mod in Gothy Discord, you get the occasional, the trolls and the folks who are just here to spark an argument. And of course, a fairly young-looking young woman in her early 20s. You get the occasional person who's not going to take you seriously, but it's like, sir, you're going to need to sit down. Anyway, for the most part, the scene has been incredibly welcoming, very open, always willing to educate, which I really appreciate, especially in my earlier days. And now I've noticed that it's gotten to the point where I'm the one doing some of the educating for folks who are older than I am. And I've gotten quite a few of my older friends into various bands, and they'll come back to me later and they're like, this has taken over my life now, KB, and it's entirely your fault, which great, that's the plan. I'm glad that I'm succeeding.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that because I do know of people who have had negative experiences with older goths. I certainly, over the years, have had plenty of negative experiences with older goths, but lots of positive ones too. So I'm glad to hear that you two have found overwhelmingly positive experiences. So kind of on the other side of that, What are some of the positive experiences or the support that you found from older Goths to be very helpful for those of us who are maybe millennial, Gen X, baby boomers who want to make sure that we're creating a welcoming environment for young people trying to get into the scene? What are some of the most helpful ways that older Goths can be supportive of younger people getting into it? So KB, I'll start with you as a mod in Gothy.
Things that I have noticed, especially when talking to my non-Goth friends, is very much not so much the information being delivered, but the way that it's delivered. Tone is everything, especially in a space like the internet, where we can't always fully determine another person's tone. You know, I've been called pretentious and an elitist a few times for just generally kind of explaining, hey, you know, this is about a certain kind of music. This is a music genre. Without it, we would not be here. This aesthetic would not exist, and we don't have a monopoly over the aesthetic. Y'all can wear your demonias if you want and listen to, I don't know, Poppy and Melanie Martinez. That's fine. It's not goth, but you're allowed to like it. I think very much creating that welcoming, open to educating atmosphere that I do see a lot of in Gothy Discord, which is amazing. It is an overwhelmingly positive experience there to see just how willing folks are to kindly educate people and introduce them to new music that they'll really love. That's one thing that I always try to be as a moderator, is very open and accepting, because you know, as a young person, especially, I had so much anxiety about, you know, what if I'm a poser? What if I'm not cool enough? I have to posture all the time. Very much just being casual and saying, hey, you know, we're all here because we really like drum machines and groovy bass lines. We are all just here for jangly guitars. This is a Bauhaus enthusiast room. We are all dorks.
It's me, I'm Bauhaus enthusiast.
Good, because we, especially with young people, in the age that everyone is obsessed with curating an appearance, we are all obsessed with posturing at any given time, and it really wears on the self-esteem of a lot of young folks. So just having this very relaxed environment where it's okay to learn, it's okay to be yourself, it's okay to enjoy things, you know, for a very long time. And this was never a result of the goth scene, but so much as the general culture of social media. I felt like I had to be very curated. I had to present myself a certain way in order to be accepted, whereas that's never been the case. It's very come as you are. We are all here for the same reason, and just kind of perpetuating and encouraging an environment that allows young people to be themselves, to not have to adhere to any, you know, ridiculous high performative standards, and just say, hey, you know, we are all a bunch of music nerds who happen to really like this thing. You are welcome to be here with us and enjoy it too.
Oh, I love that. So Indigo, from your perspective, what kinds of support did you find helpful from older Goths when you were getting into it? And just general advice for what older Goths can do to better support young people getting into Goth in general.
I mean, personally, when I joined Gothy, I found the folks to be very nice and helpful, because I originally, when I was asking about like what kind of death rock bands I should listen to, I got a bunch of recommendations that were very helpful. Yeah, so I got like recommended Specimen and Horror Vossi, which are bands I love now. And for telling the older Goths about what to do, I agree with KB that we should be less patronizing, and because I find that younger people especially, they hate being told what to do. So yeah. I think going about it in a respectful way is usually the best course of action.
Great. So it sounds like you're both recommending that older Goths offer help with education and resources, but approach it in a kind, understanding, and respectful way. Because a lot of times younger Goths getting into the scene, you know, sometimes they're grown adults themselves. So it is true that it's, you know, it's good to be mindful, not to be patronizing, not to force an education on someone who doesn't want it, but maybe offer that help or offer those resources. So Caroline, Dave, you're both in the management team for Gothy Discord as well. So you have a lot of experience with helping out young people when they come into Gothy Discord to kind of learn more about goth, get more into it. Any trends that you see with young people getting into goth, how they seem to approach it, or like maybe what they're most receptive to in maybe the Purgatory channel or the intros, wherever it is in Gothy. Caroline, what do you seem to notice with young people coming into the Gothy Discord?
Lately, I'm not sure about like much behavior, but one thing I've noticed is that a lot of the people joining right now are like maybe 20 years old, like at most. Like we do get some people in their 30s and 40s, but like, oh god, like little babies are coming in. There's so many of them too, so I think that's pretty cool that we are getting a lot of new people in. I guess during the pandemic, people have been exploring a lot. I guess that Twitch DJ streams and stuff has helped with that. But yeah, I think they seem pretty like enthusiastic about it, especially about the music. Because, you know, the past, I don't know, decade or so, it has been a lot of, you know, Instagram and stuff. And there has been a lot of talk about, you know, Kill Star and all that, and how that has taken over a bit, and people think that's what Goth is about. But I think now we've kind of gotten over that, and people get the idea. And also, Gen Z Goths look fucking amazing. Like, the makeup and hair skills that these kids have. Like, oh my god, it's amazing. Like, I learned makeup through YouTube. You know, when the beauty community on YouTube was just starting out, so like the 2000s. And I thought that was, you know, good. But now, oh my god, it's so intricate, and it looks amazing. So all the preps to the young gods coming in right now, it's really amazing to see.
That's really cool. And I agree with you. I think we've kind of turned a corner where people are focusing their attention and passion back towards music, which is really great to see, because I'm sure you remember what happened a few years ago with Goth is Not Killstar and that whole thing. I think there was a period of time where the internet was very heavily consumer based, where on YouTube all of these like some of the most popular videos were like hauls and product reviews and stuff like that. Nowadays that type of content is not as popular. It seems like there's a lot of younger people that are kind of sick of all that like product talking, and they're ready for something more original. And it's funny that you say that a lot of the people coming into the Gothy Discord are around 20. There's sometimes a few people in their 30s and 40s. I originally started a YouTube channel with the intention of helping young people learn about goth and get into goth. But anytime I see an intro in Gothy Discord of someone who's in their 30s or 40s, they're like, I heard about this on Cadaver Kelly's YouTube channel. So I'm like, well, I missed the mark with my target audience, but that's okay. So Dave, you are the admin of both Gothy Discord and r/goth. So you see a lot of young people coming in. What have you noticed lately? Any trends with the younger folks who are joining?
Well, I mean, these past year or so, it seems like in general the younger crowd that has appeared seems to have a much better grasp of things rather than only 2 years ago. So it's very happy to see, and I'm pretty sure that is, but just because of things that we've talked about with how social media have been growing and showing more the side of the music and a bit more about how things came to. So that's very nice to see. It's been less of those dull discussions of what is goth and what is not goth that tends to appear when someone new comes in. I mean, we still have those constantly on our goth, but that's another subject.
Yeah, and it seems like KB and Indigo, you two are great examples of that. You're very enthusiastic about music, and you both seem to get very excited talking about your favorite bands, and that's really great to see because, like Dave and Caroline mentioned, even just a few years ago, that was not always the case. So you two are or have gotten into goth in recent years. You've been involved for a little bit now, but you hopefully have many years ahead of you in the goth scene and with the goth community. So what do you hope to get out of the goth scene in the future? Any future plans for things you want to do, or anything you're hoping to see? Indigo, I'll start with you.
So, like I said, I'm going to my first goth concerts this following year. So I'm going to see Bauhaus. I'm seeing The Mission. I'm considering seeing Pink Turns Blue. And one of the experiences I hope to have eventually is meeting actual goth musicians, because it almost happened once. I almost got to say hi to Altered Phase vocalists, and I'm so mad that I didn't get that chance, because I was too shy at the time. Yeah, otherwise I just hope to also meet more people, just connect with my scene in general, and hopefully build it in a way that hasn't been done before, no matter how small.
Excellent. Those concerts sound like a blast. I hope you have a great time. KB, how about you? Any future plans coming up, or anything that you hope to get out of the goth scene moving forward into the future?
Oh boy, you have opened a can of worms.
That was my intention.
So I am going to see The Mission later this year in Toronto. So Toronto Gothy folks, I'm very excited to sick myself on all of you. I'm actually going with a very dear friend of mine who is not a goth, but I literally just messaged them and I said, hey, you live in Toronto, do you want to go see this concert? And they're like, yeah, Sharon. I'm like, do you even know this band? I'm like, no. That'll be fun. I'm going to, hopefully they'll get into it. If not, that's cool too. Definitely want to go and explore the local scene more, become a lot more involved there. Hopefully go to see even more shows. I would like for the cult to please tour the Northeast and not just the West Coast. Please.
Please.
Please. I know. Oh my gosh, I want to see them so bad. Anyway, obviously, you know, I plan to be around for like the rest of my time on this earth. So, you know, see a lot of new bands come about, hopefully be able to see more bands in concert. And this leads me into my comic, actually. The comic book that I am working on is drawn and written entirely by myself and is actually centered around a young girl in the mid-1980s. And, oh, am I frozen?
No.
Nope. We can see you.
Sorry. Centered on a young girl in the mid-1980s and her sort of coming of age, coming into herself as she discovers goth music, specifically Susie and the Banshees, because I love Susie, and sort of figuring out who she is and how her experiences in the scene in her fictional city will tie into all of that self-discovery and her finally claiming some personal agency in a life where she has never felt like she had any. Very much the big goth comic.
I love it. I look forward to your material.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
If I ever get to my webcomic, I also have a goth character who's into like female-fronted dark wave bands.
Blessed. I love her.
Yes. Like Switchblade Symphony, I think I made her favorite band.
Good. They're so good. Yeah, if you're a Gothy, you will see all of our updates on whatever creative business that we are working on. I post somewhat regularly about my experience in the drawing and writing process for this whole behemoth project. It's very fun.
Well, I have a recommendation for you two along these lines. I'm based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and one of the longtime promoters or show promoters in the Pittsburgh scene actually started his own comic book series that's based on the like dark alternative scene in Pittsburgh. It's an all-female superhero series called Heroinberg, based on the Pittsburgh goth and underground dark alternative scene. I see we have DJ Kellier in the chat. There's actually a character that's inspired by DJ Kellier. DJ Kellier loves like ethereal wave type of music, and the character's name is Etheria. So she inspired one of the characters in Heroinberg, but it's a comic book and it's a live action online web series. So a lot of stuff. Sounds like lots of goth related comics to look forward to.
Indeed.
Finally, all I've needed in my life.
So you both are active members of Gothy Discord, which we do actively promote that on this show as being a great resource for new people getting into goth. As two Gen Z goths who have gotten into it in recent years, you have a better pulse on the experience of someone getting into goth in modern day than Dave, Caroline, or I. So what other resources would you recommend, whether it's online resources or books, anything that you found helpful that you might recommend to someone else who's interested in looking into goth? Indigo, I'll start with you.
Really the only resource I could recommend at the moment is just listen to YouTube playlists, because that's literally how I discovered goth music. Just look up, like, maybe top 100 goth musicians on YouTube, or just look up musicians on Spotify or any music platform that you use. As for books, I don't really read any, so I can't give a say on this matter, but I hear Somewhere Leather, Somewhere Lace is a pretty good book, although I haven't had the chance to read it myself yet.
Yep, that's a good one. Andy Harriman. Andy Harriman is very insightful. So, KB, how about you? Any resources that you found particularly helpful with learning more about goth? I know you've learned a lot and gained a pretty extensive goth education in the past few years. So, what resources would you recommend to your fellow Gen Zers?
Thank you. Yeah, as Indigo said, just continuing to check out music and bands, Bandcamp especially, because a lot of the smaller artists nowadays, a lot of the current artists nowadays aren't necessarily always on Spotify or other streaming platforms until they're a bit more established. If you want to keep a pulse on stuff that is just coming out right as it's coming out, hit up Bandcamp, Bandcamp Fridays, if they're still doing those, I can't remember, or anything of the sort. Support your local scene, support small artists in the scene, because that's really the way that, we are staying undead, is club nights, supporting small bands, anything to keep goths, listening to the music, interacting with fellow goths, and supporting these wonderful artists, wonderful people who keep our scene alive for us all to enjoy. Obviously, we have r/goth, which Gothy Discord is tied to, and I find it to be a fantastic resource because it is so tirelessly curated by the absolutely fantastic moderator team. You do not get an ounce of misinformation in that subreddit, and you get fantastic, discourse in a good way, talking about different people's perspectives from all different countries, all different scenes, all different eras of life. It's fantastic. Also, obviously, Somewhere Leather, Somewhere Lace. There are plenty of lists online of books, varying in quality. Please don't read Gothic Charm School and take it as gospel. Oh, please don't do that.
No.
Praise!
In Gothy, that was just such a time. Shout out to the OGs who remember he. Anyway, yeah. Basically, read about the bands that you're interested in, especially. That's how I got a lot of my own knowledge and got into other bands, because there are some musicians who have just been in pretty much every group under the sun. Looking at you, John Klein. Yeah, interviews, musician biographies. Actually go up, and if you have a chance, I will always encourage, if you happen to have a chance and they are free, talk to a DJ, talk to a band member after a show. Of course you're going to be nervous because, I mean, this is somebody who's created art that you love. But what's really important to remember, and what I've learned from talking with other musicians and DJs and whatnot on Gothy Discord, is these people will go into the grocery store and buy the same pack of cookies as you. Okay, these are human beings. And a lot of times, artists and entertainers, creators are always willing to talk about their work. It never hurts to ask a question. That's really the most important takeaway that I want to give to Gen Z Goths. It is always okay to ask a question. It is always okay to be new and to be yourself.
Yeah, reading interviews is how I learned about Andrew Eldritch being a fencer.
He's a fencer?
Yeah.
Dude, good for him. I didn't know that. Oh yeah, Thursday is our Andrew Eldritch Focus Day in Gothy. We talk a lot about him on Thursdays for some reason.
Make fun of Andrew Eldritch Thursdays.
All words of praise, I would assume.
The opposite.
Floodland.
I love that. I love the message of both of those, and I think that creating a welcoming environment for new people to come in is how we ensure that Goth will continue on, the events, the bands will continue on. And I try to remind people who are maybe a little bit older, people of the millennial, Gen X, baby boomer generations, that at some point we need to pass the torch if we want all of this stuff to keep going. So it's, create an environment, a welcoming environment. And one thing that drives me nuts is when I hear older Goths say, well, I had to basically pay my dues coming into the scene, or basically explaining that they got hazed coming into the scene. And it's like, well, if that was a stressful or a negative experience for you, why would you want to recreate that for someone else? If you did not have an overwhelmingly positive experience when you were first getting into Goth, then create the positive experience that maybe you wish you had back then for the new people coming in.
That really applies to everything. I see it a lot in communities where, like, LGBT communities, for example. I see older folks say, like, these millennials and Gen Xers didn't have to suffer like we did. And I just think that's kind of wrong. It really rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, it's like, why would you want that? Why would you want that for someone else? If it was a negative experience for you, why would you wish that on the next generation?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's there is a very common, usually applied in sort of a memeing sense nowadays, very common saying amongst especially Gen Z, X walked so Y can run. So congratulations, older Goths. You have walked up the hill and walked down the hill both ways to school. But what about the
platform boots
who, there's no hill. Maybe there's a bus now that's taking them up and down the hill. You all walked, so these kids can run. As Kelly so excellently said, eventually the older generations will have to pass the torch on to us. So if you want to kind of, if this, wow, where did my words go? Anyway, basically, yeah, if we want to continue having a scene that is as vibrant, diverse, and active as it is right now, it is so important for us to encourage that diversity. Uplift LGBT plus artists, uplift artists of color, uplift younger Goths, give them the platform and the voice that they have and deserve so that our scene can continue to flourish and thrive as the wonderful thing that it is.
Absolutely. That is definitely a high note. I think now might be a good time for us to check in on the live chat. Dave, Caroline, have we noticed any interesting comments or questions rolling in?
There haven't been that many.
Bit of, back and forth.
Yeah, there haven't been that many questions, really.
Looks like there's some good discussion going on. I'm just reading through the chat here.
Weller finds the Vision thing enjoyable too. That's valid. It has a bunch of good songs on it. It's not like what the previous two albums were. You still enjoy it.
There's nothing wrong with Vision. You are allowed to like Vision Thing.
Yeah, it's just you can't expect it to be like, you know, the two other albums. I think it's just that.
Yeah, it's meant to be.
I think it's like ragging on Andrew Eldritch, right? It's a joke to rag on Vision Thing. It's like a pretty like common gag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have not listened to it.
It's not that bad. I will say it. Vision Thing is not that bad. We just like having a funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got some love for KB in the chat from Ruin US, which is I believe I am Ruin in the Discord. Where did it go? They said KB's ability and excitement for recommending bands to new people was 100% why I nominated her for the mod role. She rocks on that.
Oh.
Yeah, you deserve that model.
Oh, thank you.
I'm probably never gonna get mod roll because my dislike for Susie and the Banshees. That's a hot topic every time I mention it.
Nah.
It is, and it brings me pain, but I respect you. You are a dear friend of mine, and you are valid. Everyone has their own taste, even if I can't understand it myself.
I mean, I don't hate them. I just can't get into them.
It's understandable.
Divisive, I think.
Everyone has that goth band, though, that it's like a beloved goth band that maybe it just isn't quite your jam. For me, it's Fields of the Nephilim. I don't hate Fields of the Nephilim, but I've never heard a Fields of the Nephilim song or album, and I've gone through the whole discography many times. It's never grabbed me the way some of my other favorites have, and that's my thing. And the Yeehaw Goths love to come at me for that. Sorry, Yeehaw Goths.
I love Fields of the Nephilim. How could you say that?
Yeah, I actually have two well-known bands. One of them is, of course, Fields of the Nephilim as well. The other one is Christian Death. I just can't.
Don't admit that in front of the Roz fans.
Right?
Don't admit that to Nico, please.
I mean, it's not bad. It's just not my thing.
I like Christian Death, and Christian Death was one of the early bands I got into, but I could also see where someone wouldn't be that into it. I mean, it's definitely, it's pretty different. It's pretty far astray from some of the other, like first wave goth stuff, especially the UK and European first wave goth stuff. Roz Williams' Christian Death was kind of a thing of its own. Now we see a lot of death rock bands trying to emulate that, much in the way that we have goth rock bands that are kind of like the Sisters of Mercy clones that KB mentioned with Rosetta Stone, Mary Thoughts, bands like that. There's even now the modern day example of that is Merciful Nuns, which just the name Merciful Nuns meaning exactly the same thing as Sisters of Mercy. Like it's almost like they know what they are, and it's kind of like a nod to that. But there's a lot of modern bands that, or modern death rock bands that do the whole Roz Williams Christian Death shtick. And we were talking about that a little bit with Azzy and Malik last month for the death rock episode.
Shout out to them. By the way, y'all should listen to The Palest Grey. They're great.
Absolutely
That is true.
on my listen list, which grows very slowly in size. I would say, I have a fairly broad taste in goth. I like the majority of things. I would say, in terms of classic bands that I'm not as into, I like Rosetta Stone and Mary Thoughts and a lot of these clones more than Sisters. I like Sisters, I do, but Rosetta Stone has that camp to it that I love. I mean, look at me, you know, if you've ever interacted with me once, you know that I'm a very intense, very vibrant personality. So things that are a lot more stripped down are things that I tend to resonate a little bit less. It's just not, it's somewhat on my frequency, but not as direct, you know? I do like Roz Christian Death. I do like Fields of the Nephilim. Oh gosh. I would say another band I can't get into that everyone really likes is Plastique Noir. I understand the draw. I understand the vibe, and I really respect that because I know a lot of people really like them. But I don't know, it's just never been my thing. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. We all like what we like.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Plastique Noir, and they're a Brazilian goth rock band, the vocal styles are very unique and not the typical vocal styles that you would hear in goth. In goth, there usually tends to be like a handful of go-to vocal styles that you'll hear throughout like the different subgenres. And Plastique Noir has a very like modernized, not goth sounding vocal style to it. So that might be one of the reasons. I think there's a lot of people who have trouble getting into Plastique Noir for that reason. I love Plastique Noir, but they were also big when I was getting into goth or when I was like coming of age. And they recently released a new album for the first time in a number of years, I think. But that makes sense to me. I don't judge anyone for if they say like, oh, I'm not I don't like this band for whatever reason. Like we all have our reasons. Our ears like what they like.
Yeah, totally.
The other band, I think the other big goth band that I don't really like is Red Lori, Yellow Lori. I could not get into them. I'm sorry.
Oh, they're one of my favorites. They were
Likewise.
one of the first ones that like I really got into. I collect vinyl records, and KB, I'm pretty proud of this one. I have an Eye for the Main Chance on vinyl record, and it's one of the few albums from that era that I have on record. I found that it's really easy for me to find 80s albums on vinyl. It's easy for me to get modern albums on vinyl through like Bandcamp and stuff like that. But 90s and early 2000s stuff, very difficult because that's after vinyl records phased out as being like the main way people play music. But it was before vinyl records came back in style. That sort of happened, I think, more like late 2000s, early 2010s. Collecting records and playing records became trendy, so then they became available again. But records from the 90s, early 2000s are few and far between.
Oh yeah, definitely. I collect records as well, and it's interesting because where I live has such an odd little menagerie of people and alternative folks and stuff that it's not easy to find goth, but when you do, you strike the absolute jackpot. So anyone who's known me for a while has known that one of my biggest like record quests was to get Specimen's Batastrophe on vinyl, but I refused to order it online because I had this thing of, now I'm a firm believer of things happen for reasons, things happen, you know, in the way that they do because they're meant to, whatever, that I'm like, when I find this, it is going to be a sign that I'm on the right path in my life, that I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to find it in person or it's going to be given to me or I'm just never going to buy it. I am never going to seek this out myself. And on the very last day of my classes, finishing out my associate degree in illustration, I went to the record store to spend some record money that my grandparents had given me like, I don't know, X Christmases ago that I just forgot I had until I found the gift card. And I hadn't found anything. I think I found a Rat album, Invasion of Your Privacy, which hair metal, very not goth, but if anyone...
I love Rat.
Yes, anyone in Gothy ever has questions about hair metal, hit me up. Anyway, so I had that, and I still had a ton of money left on the gift card. I'm like, you know, it's okay if I don't find anything. I go back in the sort of the new in bin, which is, you know, stuff that people have sold or traded in to the store that they just got. All the way in the back, I see something very familiar. 5 faces that I have painted before. I have done a few studies of them. I don't know where, but I'd have to find them for you. 5 very familiar faces on a very familiar album cover, and I just started crying. I have a deep love for Specimen, and so now that is in my collection. But yeah, it is very difficult to find anything from the 90s that is not on CD. My first Goth CD was actually An Eye for the Main Chance, coincidentally enough. That was another Christmas gift from family because they were like, will this get you to shut up? It did not. It made it worse. You know, hey, whatever. Yeah, I would say in terms of around here for any upstate New York Goths, Rochester Goths, we do have a few things occasionally. What is the name of? There's another smaller record shop that I cannot remember. Obviously, Record Archive. Yeah, go there. But what's the one? It's in Highland. There's another one that's quite good. I've seen even like Alien Sex Fiend, Christian Death there, and been like, oh, my father would kill me if I brought these home. But that doesn't mean I don't want them. Oh, my freaking iPad. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I do not remember where I was going with this. My apologies. Just to
we were talking about physical music media and the scarcity of vinyl records from the 90s and 2000s.
Oh yeah, you can't crap. Fortunately, I think very fortunately for me, a lot of my taste is very firmly in that 80s sound. And so I do tend to have some level of luck, even in my weird little microcosm of upstate New York. People here really seemed to like Gene Loves Jezebel. I can find Gene Loves Jezebel very easily, which I greatly appreciate. I love that.
Actually, one of the luckiest finds I found in my thrift store was a Gene Loves Jezebel album, which I have right here. It's Heavenly Bodies. I have been listening to Josephina on loop. It's a great song.
Good.
Excellent.
Back.
Also in that same record store, I was able to find Flesh for Lulu, which I actually sent to KB up to Rochester, which she tells me she has now, so.
I do. I'm gonna have to go grab that. I will be right back, but I just about lost it at work when you sent that to me.
Yes.
So Indigo, it sounds like you collect CDs. Is that your primary like physical medium for music? Do you collect like records or cassette tapes or any other mediums?
I really do just collect CDs. I find that they're the most versatile, and also my brother lent me a CD player, so I'm able to just download all my tracks there, as opposed to vinyl, because I don't have a vinyl player anywhere. I only have 2 vinyls, which is Bauhaus's Mask, and luckily I was able to find Ball of Confusion by Love and Rockets, which coincidentally this day also had my birthday on it, so I was like, I had to get this.
Nice, yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of fascinating that, you know, Gen Z people are collecting CDs. I guess that's like retro for you.
Yeah, I grew up in the 2000s. I love like Y2K stuff, so CDs are definitely my thing.
Caroline, you say that with a giant CD collection behind you. I actually only have a few CDs. I get a lot of like PR from artists and record labels, and I've had some like bands and record labels send CDs to me, but I don't have a CD player. I have a DVD player that can play the CDs, so when I listen to CDs, I just pop them in my DVD player. But I collect mostly records. But it's cool because now it seems like all of those classic physical mediums for music are coming back in some capacity. I see bands on Bandcamp selling pretty much all physical mediums of music, whether it's vinyl record, CD, or cassette tape. It seems like there's bands putting out all of those mediums. Some bands will choose one over another. Some bands will sell all of them. And CDs, there are a lot of advantages to CDs over vinyl records. As a vinyl record collector, I can say that for sure. Vinyl records are a lot more delicate. You have to be a lot more careful with how you store them. They're less durable than CDs. Obviously, they're bigger than CDs, so they require more storage space. But the vinyl record collector fans, the draw is the ritual of the whole thing, the pulling the record out of its sleeve, the putting it on the turntable with the needle and everything. It's a very ritualistic thing. But like with CDs, CDs are a really convenient, space-efficient way to have physical copies of music and have that physical collection. Some people don't have any physical music at all and they go all digital. All of that's perfectly valid. You can get all of that stuff on Bandcamp and directly support independent artists through physical music mediums, through digital. So do you have a lot of good CD stores out in New York, or shops where you can pick up CDs?
The one I visit is Fifth Avenue Record Store, Fifth Avenue Record Shop. I think it's the oldest record store in New York City, if I remember correctly. They're currently going through some trouble too, so I think their Instagram has like a donation page if you want to help save the store. But they have a lot of. Sometimes I'm able to find some goth records there. Like I said, I found G Loves Jezebel. I found like 5 Susie albums already, which is funny because I don't listen to Susie, but I bought them anyway. I figured they were good for my collection. And also the Gen Z goths. Another way to get CDs is to actually go to shows because when I went to see Ultra Defay, I got this CD while the band was playing live. It was really cool. I love Ultra Defay. They're really good.
That they are indeed.
Yes.
I love that you gravitate towards death rock.
Yes, I love death rock. It's probably my favorite genre.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You gravitate towards the death rock. It sounds like KB's into like dark wave or more glam rock style, like post punk or goth rock with the Rosetta Stone stuff. It's cool to see that variety because I've seen a lot of, and I've also been told, oh well, Gen Z goths, they like the Russian post punk, the like Molchat Dama type of stuff, the Eastern cold wave stuff, and that stuff's cool. It's great music, but it's nice to see younger people getting in and having like a variety of different tastes, and because in recent years it seems like there's been an explosion of all the different subgenres of goth, whereas before a few years ago we would have different waves where like one thing would be popular and we get a lot of for a while. Like in the 2000s, death rock was the big like flavor of the hour, where there were lots of death rock bands coming out. And well, I mean, there's lots of death rock bands now, and the death rock, in my opinion, is better than ever. But in the 2000s, like the scene was very dominated by death rock, and then in the 2010s, it was very dominated by post punk. And now we're seeing just like an explosion of variety in all the different subgenres.
I think that has to do with the advent of the internet and just helping people gather around and just exploring these different genres. There's definitely a more collaborative element to it now.
Yeah, definitely. Bandcamp, love Bandcamp, and it's a great way to make sure that artists get paid more money than using like streaming services or some of the more popular streaming services. I mean, I get it that some people use some of the more popular streaming services, and I talk to a lot of bands and they tell me outside of Bandcamp, the streaming service that they do get the most money from is Spotify, because there's like Spotify, there's Apple Music, there's, I think Tidal is another one. There's like a number of services out there.
Pandora.
Yeah, and even YouTube. I think Spotify pays the artist more than some of the other popular streaming services, but obviously Bandcamp is the one where artists are going to get paid the most money because you're usually buying the music. So, KB, you collect records. You also collect CDs?
I collect records, CDs, cassette tapes, and band shirts. And
All right. So you got all of the physical mediums.
Oh yes, I love physical media and being able to have things in my hand. I am primarily a traditional artist. I need to hold the pencil and put it to the paper. Here is my most recent record acquisition, my beloved Long Live the New Flesh. Thank you so much, Indigo. This is 1987 album. It is definitely a little more new wavy than the 1985 album, Big Fun City, Blue Sisters Swing. But I'd say probably their new waviest is going to be 89's Plastic Fantastic by far, which was also, unfortunately, their final album before. Technically, they did reform and do some re-recordings, and Gigantic, which I have yet to listen to, admittedly. I'm a fraud. But anyway, yeah, I deeply delight in physical media, perhaps because everything is so accessible and digital nowadays. And not to mention, having a good bit of physical media on hand can be very practical too. You know, we get a lot of lake effect snow and stuff around here, especially towards the winter. Our winter lasts for about 8 months. It's snowing outside as I speak. So, you know, and of course, the moment the power goes out, right? I'm always listening to music. I just don't bother with the silence. I need something to think to. So, most of the power goes out. Here I am. Can't listen to my records because obviously turntable's gone. Well, I've got a Discman and I've got a Walkman. So I'm just out here loading up on my tapes, popping, some Vandal Moon. I'm good to go. And so I also get to kind of laugh at everyone who's like, no, the internet's down, the power is down, I can't listen to my... You'll always see me listening to Spotify, so this is no shade to streaming services, because if you click on my Discord profile, you'll see that I'm listening to something, inevitably. If it's not Spotify, it's YouTube Music, so... But yeah, the ability to just have it in your hand as a work of art that someone has created, there is such a uniquely personal feeling about all of that, and that is why I collect physical media like I do. Plus, it directly supports artists. If you're supporting a smaller artist off of Bandcamp, they get the majority of, and if it's Bandcamp Friday, all of the proceeds. Just like going to a show and, meeting one of the band members at the merch table and just saying, hey, your work is amazing. It is so inspiring. I absolutely love it. How much are shirts and can I buy 2?
I actually started collecting physical media for that purpose too, because sometimes we get a lot of blackouts here due to the bad weather, and now that whenever last time my internet went down, I just popped up whatever I had in my digital collection. I listened to a bit of the Crystal Method. That was really fun to do in the middle of a blackout while my sister was like, the internet's down, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can get CD players and tape players that are battery operated. Just stock up on batteries. When the power goes out, you can listen to your music. I agree with you, KB, 100% about the value of physical media. One thing I also like about it is I can look at my music collection visually laid out in front of me, and that's not an experience I get as much with the digital. Yeah, I can scroll through what's in my library digitally, but it's a little different, just visually seeing it in front of me.
Yeah, but this looks so cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so much better. I post occasional updates to my full collection. Also those in Gothy, once again, because that's the primary social media place I'm active on, so that's why I reference it all the time. You'll see me do my Dolls with Tapes, Vinyls with Vinyl series, where I'll pose a doll from my collection with an album and then talk about that, give a little album review, talk about it as a way to kind of display both collections, but also just because it looks so damn cool to look across the, to look at the wall across from you and just see a whole wall of cassette tapes all arranged according to release order. Very proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So KB, you mentioned that you like hair metal and glam rock. So I wanted to ask you to, are there other kind of alternative subcultures that you've explored at all, or other verticals of alternative music, punk or industrial? Sounds like maybe a little bit of metal. KB, I'll start with you. I know you said hair metal, glam rock.
Yeah, I've not really been able to find a lot of spaces for those two specific niches, which I have been actively searching for. Would love to find other people who like stuff as much as I do. Obviously, I lead a little mini coalition on Gothy at this point of people who just really like Rat or something, just any hair metal band you can throw in there. Visual K is what I got started on in terms of music in general, alternative music. Visual K is a, I guess it's a subgenre, it's a subculture, it's a sub-style, it is probably equal parts music and fashion subculture that originated in Japan in the 80s and 90s. Lots of different influences there, lots of different bands there. That's how I really got into music. I do like a good bit of punk. I'm not as versed in punk. I like a lot of the older stuff, once again, from the 70s, 80s. Sonically, I don't know, my brain just, that's where my brain goes in terms of sounds, that era. But yeah, I would say I towards more guitar-driven music as compared to more electronic music. and perhaps that is very similar to my, preference for physical, tangible media.
Very cool, very cool. Indigo, how about you? What other are there other like verticals of maybe alternative or niche music that you're into that you've had a chance to check out?
Like KB, I also like a lot of glam metal. Literally the first band I ever got into when I was 8 years old was Molly Crew. Molly Crew is still like my favorite glam metal band to this day. Otherwise, I also grew up on I have a family of rockers, so we also grow up on a lot of new wave. Every night I hear them blast Safety Dance. It gets annoying, but you know what? It's what they like. I also grow up on a lot of metal in general, so Rob Zombie is a favorite in the house too. Ozzy Osbourne, Bon Jovi gets played too. I used to watch my brother play like Guitar Hero, so there's a lot of other bands that I heard from there. And then in high school, I had a thing where I was into a lot of more of the classic rock, so mainly I was into Queen. Queen was my favorite band at the time.
Oh yeah, Queen's great.
Yeah, Queen. I still have a Queen shirt. I also listened to like Pink Floyd and all that. Yeah, and then right before I got into goth, I was getting into the Y2K resurgence that I think is currently happening. So people are starting to rediscover the aesthetics of it. I've seen a lot of people reminiscing about games like Jet Set Radio. People listening to like jungle, drum and bass, big beat, which are all genres I still like. I will literally yell about Propeller Heads. Their Decks and Drums and Rock and Roll is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. And then, yeah, after that, that's when I got into goth. So it's been quite the musical journey.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's really interesting that you're into D&B. That's it's kind of funny because they say alternative kids from the 2000s usually go one of two paths: they become goths or they become bass heads.
No, I became both. I am powerful.
¿Por qué no los dos?
No. We're just powerful. That's why we can't make you a mod.
And that's actually really interesting to hear because it does seem like usually goths do have other types of alternative music or other music verticals that they might have as kind of like a secondary go-to. And it seems like a lot of the like younger Gen Xers and older millennials, like people who came up in the 90s or maybe even early 2000s, tend to gravitate towards industrial. Like that was a big sister genre to goth in those eras, was like goth and industrial.
Yeah, I actually started getting to a bit of industrial. I've been listening to a lot of KMFDM lately. I also checked out Lords of Acid, Skinny Puppy. I think I checked out a little bit out of. Yeah, 9 Inch Nails, all those industrial bands. Well, I guess 9 Inch Nails is more industrial metal, but you know.
I have some vague knowledge of like industrial metal kind of stuff. Like Dead Z. I like Dead Z. They're pretentious. They're fun. Like the extent of my like industrial taste / knowledge is Skinny Puppy. And yeah, I'd say I've been definitely ever since getting into goth. Really, I've been a lot more open-minded with my music taste, which is actually how I got into glam rock and glam metal, stuff like that. Even finding, some current artists, for example, like Crazy Licks on the glam metal side and Lemon Twigs on the glam rock side, who have really nice, really authentic sounds that very much encapsulate what I like about both those subsets. I'm an oddity, I guess, in that sense, because I personally don't meet a lot of other goths who are very into kind of the more glam influence side of things, which we don't see a lot of artists nowadays, especially who are leaning into that. I'm curious as to why, admittedly, but I think right now the general trend is a lot of synth-heavy wave music or very kind of early 80s revival sort of thing. So, maybe eventually we'll hit like glam goth revival heyday, but I don't know. Somebody make something. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do it. And do you really want me to be doing more things? Do you really want more of me?
I just want to drum for a corny death rock band. That's it. That's a dream.
Please do just this so I can be your biggest internet stan. I'll make a Twitter account. I'll post fan cams.
Hey, I will buy your album drop on Bandcamp. It's interesting to see that, and now, like, speaking it out loud with the I know with baby boomers and with the older Gen Xers, it tends to be like a lot of goths were also into punk, and then, like I said, with the like younger Gen Xers, older millennials, a lot of goths were into industrial as well. But with younger millennials and Gen Z, it seems to be a lot more of eclectic taste outside of goth. And I'll bet that the internet probably is a lot of the reason why the people who did have the internet growing up tend to have more of that eclectic taste.
Yeah, I think so. Like, 'cause before, subcultures were more of a physical thing. Like, you would go hang out with people and learn about music that way. Whereas now, I see a lot of talk about, like, fandoms, and people are into a lot of fandoms, and I think that kind of thing is what's happening nowadays.
Definitely agree, because a lot of music culture and fan cultures become very intertwined with the internet, especially on social media platforms like Twitter and stuff. You know, you see, for example, like the K-pop fans and stuff like that. That's very much fan culture intertwined with, you know, their own kind of subset of music culture. So you see a lot of fan lingo and a lot of that kind of stream in. And I would say definitely the advent of the internet makes for a lot more of an eclectic sort of starting base for a lot of young goths' musical journeys, because you get people in from everywhere. Like I've got friends who are like, you know, you showed me like Multidoma and stuff, and I usually listen to city pop, or, you know, I usually listen to Grebo, and this is really cool. I've never heard of it before. And I find that absolutely fascinating, because usually in the past with older goth folks, I've kind of been able to figure out, you know, roughly what generation they are based on the other bands that they list as being interested in, be it, you know, punk or industrial or something of the sort. And nowadays, thank you. Sorry, my mother had handed me a charger. Nowadays, it's kind of anything goes, mixed bag, and I think that's really cool.
That is.
Yeah, I had no idea about industrial, like the more dancey stuff, until I like actually experienced the scene. Like, I had a weird like first like interaction with the real life goth scene. It was Vigete. Like, that is kind of insane. But like, there is a lot of like that industrial stuff going on in Germany. Well, I think it was here too, but the scene here was basically dead. But yeah, there was a lot of industrial, so I became more of a casual fan of that. I love dancing to it, but it's not something I really like put on at home and like deep dive into the bands or anything. It's just like this, I love this on the dance floor. And for working out, very good for that.
Yeah, that makes sense, because Germany is the birthplace of industrial. A lot of people cite like Kraftwerk as being the kind of like cornerstone starting place for a lot of electronic music genres, honestly. But that is also my exposure to industrial has been mostly going to clubs, because industrial is never something that I like was seeking out online or anything myself. When I would like dig through music, I would always gravitate towards goth, post-punk, new wave, punk, that kind of stuff. But then I started going out to the clubs, and after a few drinks and hearing the DJs spin some like industrial tracks, now I'm kind of like, hey, this has got a good beat to it, and you know, it's fun to dance to out in the clubs after a few drinks. But that is not something that I would have probably been seeking out for myself had I not like experienced it in that club setting. So that might be a lot of why you see a lot of people who started going to the clubs in the 90s and 2000s are really into industrial, because that was a big cornerstone of alternative clubs back then.
Yeah, and if you go to like any number of European festivals, you will, even if you want to or not, you will see Suicide Commando and V Nation and all of those kind of bands many times. Like, you can't avoid it.
I hear a lot of goth clubs also spin industrial, so the two scenes have kind of just merged together at some point.
Yeah, that is true. There's a lot of goth clubs and nights that do that. Although I'm seeing more club nights, at least around where I'm at, that like specialize, where there are some nights that are a little more electronic. There are some nights that are kind of half goth, half industrial, and then other nights that are a little more 80s post-punk and new wave leaning. But in industrial and goth, it used to go hand in hand, especially in the 90s and 2000s. I think the number of people going out to the clubs was kind of dwindling on both sides a little bit during that time frame. And it's probably just because the original first wave of goths and you know, electronic industrial fans were getting to a certain age where they weren't going out to the clubs as much. So in the clubs, with both of them having like lower attendance, a lot of these nights started like combining up in the 90s, and that's how, at least in the US, I can't speak to other scenes, but I've talked to a lot of people in different cities in the US who were around during that time, and that's kind of what they've told me is like, yeah, a lot of the goth industrial combo nights started happening in the 90s. A lot of DJs and promoters started combining events to get more people out at their events, and that's where or in the early 90s. I mean, probably in the 80s too, because there was like intermingling between like the genres and the clubs and stuff. But in the US, early 90s is where that like kind of 50-50 goth industrial night really started taking off.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I've heard here from people who, I guess now they would be like late 40s, early 50s. So Norway has already a tiny population. So I think we kind of started out with, you know, mixing goth, metal, synthy stuff, industrial. And then there was that kind of in the early 2000s where people got to a certain age and people were you know, having kids or anything like that. And then it kind of died down. And then came like people my age, and now you have like a little resurgence now. And I'm going to Oslo like 5 times this year now because somebody over there is booking all the great post-punk and dark wave bands right now. So next month I'm going to see Cellofan, Keilan Mikla. I think the week after I will see Lebanon Hanover. Like, yeah, things are happening now. That's great.
I'm so jealous. That's amazing. I'd love to see it. Lebanon Hanover and Cellophane are like 2 of my favorites. So very jealous.
And also, it was super cheap too, like 25 euros maybe, which was really surprising. I thought that, you know, concerts after the pandemic would cost more, you know, or lost revenue the past couple of years. But no, it was super cheap. So I was like, gotta go.
Yeah, I've got some exciting shows coming up in the next couple weeks. On Wednesday, I'm going to see Actors. Then I am going to see at some point in April Soft Kill. And then I'm going to see Nox Novacula. And then early May, I'm going to see Molchat Dama, driving out to Ohio to see Molchat Dama. But yeah.
The only 2 shows I got coming up in the month, I'm seeing Aura on April 1st, and Red Party is doing their 15th year anniversary, so I'm going to be seeing Rose Garden Funeral Party for the 2nd time, and I'm also going to be seeing Vision Video for the 1st time.
Oh yeah, that looks like an amazing show. I did see because I'm friends with like some of the people who like run Red Party on Facebook, and I saw them you know, like posting the lineup and stuff. It looks really awesome. I got to see Vision Video at Absolution Fest this year. Really awesome, energetic performance. And I got to meet Dusty, and he was great. Really nice guy. Really cool band, cool performance. And I don't think, I know I've never seen Rose Garden Funeral Party, but I will see Rose Garden Funeral Party this this year at Absolution Fest, or Absolution Fest in October 2022. They're going to be playing. So you'll have to let us know how the performance is after you see them.
Yeah, I saw Rose Garden at Murder of Crows. They were fantastic. I think my favorite show at Murder of Crows was definitely Bellwether Syndicate, because they're one of my favorite bands of all time. William Faith and Scary Lady Sarah were just amazing seeing live.
Yeah, they do put on a good performance. I have a fun story about the first time I met them. I saw Bellwether Syndicate back in 2019. They opened up I drove out to Akron, Ohio, and they opened up for Clan of Zymox. And after the show, after Bellwether Syndicate played, but before Zymox went on, I was out on, they have an outdoor patio at this venue. I was having a cigarette. And at the time, I hadn't been on YouTube or online that long, but Scary Lady Sarah was walking out, and I said, "Scary Lady Sarah, like, great set. You had such a cool performance." And Scary Lady Sarah recognized who I was from online, and then like William Faith comes out, and because I've been, I used to listen to Faith in the Muse like as a teenager, and so like William Faith, like longtime fan. William Faith comes out and she's like, "Oh, this is Cadaver Kelly from the internet or whatever," and it was just like one of the most starstruck moments ever. But that's how I met them, and they actually spent like probably 15 minutes talking to me before I left the venue at the end of the night. I think they were telling me that I should go up to Murder of Crows. And I'm like, oh, we'll see. I definitely will make it up there at some point. It's not too hard to get to New York City from Pittsburgh. So at some point I'll go up there for Murder of Crows.
It's a dream to meet them one day. I really want to say hi to them.
You should definitely do it if you ever see them at a show. They're very nice, very approachable. You can just go up to them and say, Will and Sarah, like, great performance, and I'm sure they'd love to, meet you and talk to you for a few minutes. They're like that. They're like the ultimate goth mom and dad. Anyone who talks to them or thanks them for what they do in the scene, they're amazing.
Actually surprised I haven't met them in person, because they too go to Vegeta every year, but I somehow haven't bumped into them. But hopefully I will one day.
Yeah.
Oh, and yeah, the Bellwether Syndicate played Vegeta in 2019, I think, but I didn't go. There was some other band I prioritized more over it. I don't remember which band it was, but my friend who I was sharing an Airbnb with went to that show, and she showed me some video, and it was really great. I think Rosie Garland showed up, and they played Snake Dance. So that seemed legendary.
That does sound legendary. So we've been talking for hour 40 here. Indigo, KB, any closing thoughts as Gen Z Goths that you want to share to, whether it's other Gen Z Goths or older Goths in the scene? Indigo, any closing thoughts from you?
I just say continue to support modern bands coming out, because there's a lot of great new sounds coming out right now, and I think it's great that we have Bandcamp and all these other services to support them, so I just say support them wherever you can and keep the goth scene alive.
Great. And KB, any closing thoughts from you?
I completely agree, Indigo. Folks, Gen Z Goths, Elder Goths, and anyone in between, please continue to support the scene in any way that you can, even if it's just saying, "Hey, I love this new band. Have you heard of them?" to your goth friends, either physically or online. If somebody expresses interest in this subculture, direct them to reliable sources, like the playlists we have in Gothy Discord, stuff like that, and just say, "Hey, you know what? Since you were interested in this, here are some resources that can help you out." Just be open, be accepting, and above all, be yourself. Come as you are. We are more than happy to have you here.
Yes. Join Gothy. It's a great place.
This is not a cult. Except for the cult.
Right.
We have a cult.
We make fun of Andrew Elder on Thursday.
Well, it's definitely not a cult because we're not wearing the matching shirts anymore. Because Dave and Caroline, apparently, I missed a memo that we're not doing the uniform anymore.
I may have forgotten that. Sorry.
Those are great messages for us to leave off on. Thank you, everyone who tuned into the live stream. Thank you to everyone who's watching this back on YouTube, everyone who supports the show in general. Next month, our topic will be Goth Reddit. We've talked a lot about r/goth this episode, but next month we'll be joined by one of the moderators from r/goth who works with Dave to talk all about the sub. So please follow Gothy Roundtable on Facebook to see when we post the date and details for that episode. KB Sinister and Indigo, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate you.